Good afternoon. Today I'm going to present the presentation about different preservation methods of grapes. So to start, I'm going to give you guys a brief introduction. First of all, I want to let you know that how the experiment is going to work, a brief introduction before giving you guys the experimental design, which will be presented later. We will have three different variables tested in two different scenarios, one in room temperature and one in the fridge. I'll explain this in deepness in the experimental design section. But first of all, I want to let you guys know why this is important. Knowing how food is preserved better will help people prevent having food waste that will eventually be lost money or food just not being used. Based on the USDA, they estimate that almost 30 to 40% of the food ends up as waste. This estimate is thanks to the USDA Economic Research Service. It's also important to recognize that this is also a big problem in Mexico. In Mexico, the government says that 37% of the food produced ends up as waste, almost 10 billion tons of food a year. That's why this experiment is being conducted to prevent this waste of food. The experiment can be aimed at anyone that has a household or any other place that involves the management of food. So as a research question, we had how does food preservation differ between different types of preservation containers? So based on this research question, we create a hypothesis. If a topper is used, then the food will take longer to rot than with the other methods. Justification. So to justify this hypothesis we made, we basically research what is the most used containers to preserve food, which in this case was topper because of the airtightness that this produces. So we basically thought that preventing moisture to coming into the container will make grapes last even more. So preventing less food waste in this case. As a theoretical framework, we added why fruits rot, why don't last enough, and how do we store these different fruits. This is just a brief representation of our theoretical framework. It's important to know that minerals that fruits have can have a great effect on this preservation or this problem we're trying to solve. There are many minerals that can affect the preservation of fruit. For example, as mentioned by anonymous fruit chlorine, phosphorus can apparently make the fruit firmer and last longer, while potassium can make foods rot faster and easier. According to the health webpage, healthy options, food goes bad and both because of microorganisms living inside the fruits, as well as bacteria and mold, which if not stored properly can form quicker than expected. So basically, if a fruit is not stored properly, people will have food waste created way before they expected to eat it. So this is why we can have 30 to 40% of food being wasted. It's also important to know that gases can also have an effect on this preservation. That's why tomatoes or apples are stored in different parts of the fridge, because the gases created by one fruit can affect the rottenness of the other. So that's why it's important also. For the experimental design, as I told you, this is where I will go in deep. First of all, we're going to test three different types of containers, or three different ways of storing a fruit, right? One is Ziploc, the other one is topper, and the other one is simply being in the air without container or without an airtight container in this case. We will have two different environments, room temperature and cold temperature, or the fridge. Each day the food will be tested or observed, and notes will be taken based on the visual observations. We will take in consideration color, smell, texture, and ripeness. The results of the experiment weren't as expected based on the hypothesis. So basically, it failed. we reject this hypothesis we made. Um, I also forgot to mention that we were going to test in each type of container 10 different grapes alone. So basically, we have 60 different grapes to have a better representation or a better result where we can decide if which one is better. Because if we only test one, maybe that one piece of fruit just didn't make it because it wasn't maybe it had a microorganism inside that prevented it from lasting longer. So that's why each container will have 10 different grapes to have a better representation of how they last. The results, as I already mentioned, weren't as expected in the hypothesis. This lasted 2 weeks, and these are the results. So basically, we can see that the topper wasn't the better option. The best option was no container. And why is this? Is, as I already mentioned, different foods have different ways of storing. In this case, grapes need to have an airflow, need to have humidity, need to have contact with the air for it to prevent the having a rottenness for in this case. We can see the average of the grapes in our container was approximately 10.4 days. Topper had an average of 9.4 days, Simplex 8.5 days, and the room temperatures grapes almost lasted nothing. It was 3.9 days for no containers, 2.3 days for topper, and 2 days for Ziplocs. So basically, the results lean towards no containers being the best way. So as a conclusion, based on a brief research I made, different web pages show that there can be many variables that affect the way a grape develops or its shelf life lasts. In this case, the grape being still on the stem can affect the shelf life, or people usually want to watch the grapes before storing them, which can basically worsen the shelf life because of the skin of the grape is very delicate. So in this case, it will absorb the water, making it last way less. So I think we could have added different variables to increase the credibility of the experiment. So overall, the results had a good correlation with other experiments conducted by um, different experiments conducted in the internet. We found that all indicate that grapes last longer on fridges and with the correct or appropriate airflow. So that is my conclusion, and that will be all. Thank you for listening.